Hello and welcome to the Overlanding podcast, the original podcast dedicated to vehicle-dependent travel. I'm your host, Andy Smith. Throughout the series, I'll be chatting with adventurous people who have chosen to travel the world by bicycle, motorcycle, car and truck. The aim of the podcast is to discover what motivates people to embark on life-changing journeys and to hear some incredible stories along the way. Jayne and David have been travelling the world for the last 8 years under the guise Lizzybus. Lizzy is a 110 Land Rover Defender and has carried Jayne and David through more than 80 countries. Unfortunately, the quality of the connection was not the best on this podcast, but please bear with it. Okay, let's get started. Hi guys, welcome.
Hi, welcome.
Yeah, hello there to both of you. Finally, we sort of don't actually meet, but at least we get to speak.
Actually, you've only got me today. Emma's out walking the dogs, so just me chatting around the campfire today.
Wonderful. I can't believe that the dog came higher up than we did.
It's interesting, isn't it? Our paths have nearly crossed, well, once for sure, and I think looking at your route map and just looking through the months and years you've been on the road, I think our paths have nearly crossed a few times. But certainly in Kazakhstan, I think we came very close to crossing paths.
Yeah, I think just to actually set this here, in 2009, David and myself, he worked in criminal law and I worked loosely in IT. We came up with this wonderful plan that we would buy one of those Land Rover things and we would drive it around the world. There was a few bets taken that we might make it as far as Dover or possibly France. But here we are 8 years later, sat in rainy old Birmingham, as we're here to try and secure visas and amongst other things. 8 years into the journey, 85 countries,
136,000 miles.
136,000 miles. I love to exaggerate. It keeps me going.
It's confusing with kilometres, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I just choose the one that sounds the longest, and really I should be doing it in kilometres. But David's just given me the mileage. In miles, it's fine. Yeah, and stranger things happen, and we, after 6 months, have decided it's a way of life that we just absolutely love, and we can't ever see it ending.
Yeah. So at what point in your lives then, let's go right back to 2009 then, how long had you planned before you actually left in 2009, and what kind of made you decide to leave?
You don't plan something like this, you just do it. You're aware yourself that if you make plans, you're going to fall flat on your face in the first couple of days. Things never ever go to plan. We just had a general idea of sort of leave the UK, head south, down to South Africa, head back up the other side of Africa, then turn right. And that was about it. And you just plan each country or each couple of countries as you came along.
I think on a serious note, it was more about choices, and everything that we'd ever read, the choice was that we wanted to go somewhere hot. So instead of going north, we would go south. And the second thing was, whenever we'd seen anything, any pictures of overlanders and stuff, there was all in these Defenders with a nice great big roof tent, and it all looked romantic, and sort of that's where the decisions started to fit into place, purely by looking around and seeing what was. But David is he loves to actually investigate stuff, and as simple as it was, he will spend hours. And the Defender came up as the most reliable vehicle. We're not saying it is, but for us, it was our vehicle of choice. So we plumped for the Defender, mechanical, no electronics. We didn't really have we were sold a putt, to be honest. We didn't quite know what we were doing, and we ended up with a Defender we called Lizzybus.
Yeah, and for the Land Rover nerds and the techie people out there, it's a 110, right? And it's is it a 300 TDI?
Yeah, being from Birmingham, they were built just down the road from us. And also, sort of iconically driving through Africa, it had to be a Land Rover. I'm sorry, it just had to be.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to dispute the fact or argue with you being a Toyota owner, but
they didn't tell us it was a Toyota owner. We'll have to cancel the interview now, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Your main reasons for wanting to do this trip then, to step back even further, were you kind of retired? Did you sell everything? How did you kind of get in the position to actually set off and go?
David started life as a what was your first job?
The first job was a QS.
Yes, quantity surveyor, and then he sort of by-tracked into criminal law. And for whatever reason, it got busier and busier and busier. And it got to the stage where after 15 years he didn't have a Christmas off. We did a little bit of backpacking. I worked in IT. I did 12-hour shifts, days and nights. And we were seeing about 4 hours a week of each other, which to me was a perfect relationship, if I'm honest. Considering it against living 2 foot from each other 24 hours a day, I often regret the decision to leave, purely on that basis, of course. However, we did decide that there has to be more to life than this. David was getting aches and pains down his arms, his legs. And I think we were virtually at the point where we either did something drastic or we just split up and went our own way. So it just seemed a romantic thing to do. And because of our backpacking, we'd been in Argentina and we were on a little Jeep safari and we were in actually a Land Rover. And the vehicle in front was going up, and I said to David, I said, oh gosh, look how that moves up and down that thing. Jokingly said we should get one and buy one, and little did we know, a year later we said, well, let's just do that, let's get it. And that's what we did. So we gave up our jobs, rented out our houses, sold and gave away everything that we owned, and we're not quite pensionable age, so we had solely the income from the houses, which became our income in its entirety, with a small amount of savings. So if anything went wrong, we could afford to get back to England. And we set off with, I must say, with great relief when the day happened, because you get so bogged down with advice and you've not done it before. So we bought a long-range fuel tank off eBay. We put a few boxes and a roof tent second-hand off eBay on the roof, a few boxes in the back. We fitted a water filter system, and we had a Coleman's petrol cooker. Ideal, and off we set.
Perfect. That sounds like a good setup. So you headed down into Africa first, and then down the west coast and up the east?
Down west coast Africa, down through Sierra Leone, Liberia, the Congo, Angola, and then staying down to Namibia, and then into South Africa was the first leg, the traditional sort of London to Cape Town run. And it took us exactly 1 year from the moment we touched down in North Africa in Morocco to when we actually arrived at Cape Point. Was exactly 1 year to within 3 hours.
Wow.
For the journey. And we hadn't actually planned that. It was just Jayne turned around and said, do you know what day it is today? Yeah. And she says, do you know, it's been exactly 1 year since we touched down in Africa. And that leg took us exactly 1 year.
And how did you find travelling for Africa? You mentioned that you'd been on safari, I think, just before. And so you'd travelled to Africa before. So
No, we'd very strange. We'd never actually owned a four-wheel drive before. And we'd done no off-roading courses. It was what you call an exponential learning curve.
Yeah,
I think West Coast Africa was absolutely the learning point for us, for everything, for driving, for living, for. We were being stopped up to 30 times a day by the police, the military. We had no experience of this. We had our documents put in the drawer, the Luger pistol on the top. But after 6 months, the first 6 months, we really didn't like it. And we were thinking, oh gosh, if only this Land Rover would break, then we could go home and say, oh, well, the Land Rover broke. We didn't feel able to go home and just go, oh, we didn't like it. Plus, we'd given our jobs up, we'd rented our houses out, and we just kept going, hoping that the Land Rover would break. And she did break, but she never died, We had one traumatic event after another. It was constant. We never washed for 6 months. We washed in rivers and streams. We were eating. I mean, the meat was held up at the side of the road, and there was meat with flies on it, and there was meat without flies on it. Now, I didn't want the stuff with flies, and I most certainly didn't want the stuff that the flies didn't want. So we became vegetarian, and David lost three stone, was it? And I lost 1.5, which was. But slowly, you get into the rhythm of life and overlanding, and you learn about your vehicle. And we got to the stage. By the time we did get to the end of down to South Africa, we knew this was for us.
Typically, when people have left on overland trips, after the first 2-3 months, they know it's for them. and they're really, really into it. But it's interesting that 6-month period was almost enough to kind of put you off it. You're obviously glad you kind of soldiered on and got through that, though, right?
Well, we told everyone we're driving around the world and we were never going to come back with our tails between our legs.
Yeah.
So, and I think also it's you've worked all your life up until this point. It's your old life leaving you. Your attitudes, your thought processes, everything changes when you're on the road. It takes a bit of time to adjust to it. I've been working for over 30 years, and to suddenly change your lifestyle to become a nomad is actually very difficult to accept sometimes. And also on reflection, you think, where's the spectacular sunsets every night? Because that's what I expected to see, and it doesn't happen like that. You just feel that you're sitting there all day just driving around, but that's your old life leaving you and a new one filling you up.
Yeah, it's interesting the changes people go through, and it's something I like to talk to people about a lot on the podcast, because I think those kind of changes in your life are some of the most valuable ones. You know, you go on a journey, which is a physical journey, but you also go on a mental, internal journey also. Yeah. How did you find being in a car with each other for 24 hours a day?
The most important choice you'll ever make is the choice of vehicle. Yeah. I'll tell you now, if we had bought a Toyota, Jayne and myself would have been divorced after 3 months because you had to have talked to each other. We drive a Land Rover. You can't talk. It's too noisy.
Well, although I guess that reinforces the strength of the relationship between me and my wife then.
Yeah. It does, most definitely. It's something quite interesting in a lot of overlanders that we meet is that normally it's the exception where both of them, specifically if it's a man-woman couple, where the women drive, it's mainly the men that drive. And when we first set off, I'm more nervous when David was at the side of me. I'd never even driven a 4x4. I wouldn't, if it was a rocky bit, I used to get out of the vehicle. It reminds me of in Morocco when we were going down those mountains, that mountain range there at the very beginning, the Atlas Mountains, and there was a guy. And these two guys were following us, and it was such a switchback, and we could barely get through it. The drop-off was awful. And I got out screaming and squawking like a girly. And I said, I'm not doing it, I'm not driving. And these guys were just sitting there selling these little rocks in the middle of nowhere, watching this mad English woman screaming and shouting, crying, going, I can't do this. I need to go back. And it was, when I think about it now, I'm ashamed of myself. But of course, now I'm likely to be the one going, we can do it, David, come on. And David with the voice of caution.
I typically drive more than Emma probably. She drives a lot, and her off-road driving is actually incredible because she spent 9 years out in the Middle East making wildlife documentaries. So she spent a lot of time driving off-road anyway. So her off-road driving is amazing. But the reason that I like to drive, and I don't know if you guys are the same, is just having the constant connection with the vehicle. It becomes very easy to recognize when things are starting to go wrong, or you hear new noises. I think you're generally more in touch with the vehicle if you drive it every day.
Driving a Toyota, you don't need to be it'll just go on forever. Yes, you're exactly right.
To be honest, Andy, you've hit the nail on the head there. And because the final, no matter how good or bad Emma is or myself, driving or diagnosing, the bottom line is that when the shit hits the pan, excuse the pun, it is going to be the man that actually is the final one. I can pass the spanners, I can pass, gasket take the gaskets up and stuff like that. We're good at changing tyres, but basically the bottom line is it is the man's responsibility, no matter how well mechanically set up the women are. And I think in that respect it was very difficult for David to let that go. If there was anything going wrong, he wanted to be driving it because he felt he was the only one that could understand the vibration through the pedal, the vibration through the wheels. But over time, and I'm sure Emma's the same, I can say to David, and he values my input now, which is actually really, really fabulous, to say, well, David, no, I think the noise is coming from here or there, and you can discuss it. That's the diagnosis is the worst part. Yeah. But you're right, yeah.
I think there's also a level of taking responsibility also, because for example, if you have like a ball joint failure or something like that,
Yes.
then if one of you doesn't pick it up or someone picks it up or you ignore a noise, I think there's a certain level of taking responsibility. And if one person is always driving the car or is more involved in the car maintenance, I've just recently been reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and it's something that crops up in that book quite a lot of being in touch and in tune with your vehicle, and it's something I find quite fascinating.
We're totally in tune with our vehicle. We know every knock, every noise, every grange, and if you hear something different, what's that? I don't know. Is it serious? I don't know. Have a listen again, and you'll be amazed at what you do pick up on.
Yeah, and also David's book of choice is the Haynes Manual, which he will read fervently from cover to cover, and then from the front again back through. You can never have enough information, I think, as the man, and trying to sort it, trying to learn. And that was the problem with us, because we'd never driven it. We didn't know what it sounded like.
Yeah.
But now we do, and as soon as something goes off, David's even heard through the rattle and thunder of an off-road drive the valve of the tyre spitting out, and he's heard that above the noise. He's so in tune with it now.
And actually, one thing you pointed out there, which goes against me in the Toyota Land Rover ongoing debate, is the fact that you can get a Haynes manual for your Land Rover. I looked everywhere for a Haynes manual for our vehicle, and I couldn't find one. And the only manual I've got is an Australian one, and it is poor in comparison to a Haynes manual. It's absolutely terrible the way it's written.
We not only have a Haynes manual, we actually have a complete file on water ingress.
Oh, very good.
Which you definitely don't need on yours.
No. Manual, the water ingress manual, the rebuild manual, the workshop, the Land Rover workshop manual, all on PDF format, blagged off the internet. So we can get around most things. Yeah.
And it's good. And actually, that's a good top tip. Actually, we've managed to find the official Toyota workshop manual for our vehicle on PDF format somewhere, and it's good. You can actually, it's got all the diagnostic codes in it and all the processes, all the workshop processes for diagnosing problems, which is really handy.
Yeah, well, on the Land Rover, you don't diagnose the problem; just hit it with a hammer.
Yeah.
Diagnostics. No, Bennett.
Okay.
How's the other half live? I don't know.
I know. Sometimes you see some people cruising around in these ginormous, great big kind of, big 4x4 trucks and 6x6 trucks, and I'm just amazed at some of the vehicles sometimes. But there's a space for everyone within the overlanding community. So.
We like yourselves meet many of these, and we have such great guys. There's a couple, she's Russian, he's American, in a great big massive orange thing called Perkymog, a Unimog. It actually goes up and elevates to twice its size. We've also got another friend, Betty and John, and they're in a Mercedes big truck, and they look, and they other people, not them, they say to us, would you not like something like that? No, absolutely no. We've got what we chose because we can go off-road, we can get where we want.
We can park in town if we need to.
Yeah, no, it doesn't pull me over to wanting that. Most definitely not. We're happy with what we've got.
Yeah, definitely. I can agree with that totally.
Yeah.
So from Africa then, that was in 2009. Where did you go from there? Did you take a break or did you carry on?
We carried on. We headed from South Africa up the east coast, up through sort of Kenya, up to Egypt, and then through Jordan, then into Syria, which was quite interesting, and then into Turkey, then across, heading east down through Iran, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and then we shipped to Southeast Asia and Thailand, Malaysia, and all around that part of the world.
Yeah.
And we still didn't stop from there. We shipped from Singapore to Perth in Australia. We drove around Australia for 7 months and got kicked out for overstaying our visa and banned for 2 years. So we shipped from Melbourne then to Buenos Aires. From Buenos Aires, we went south and we drove all the way down to Ushuaia. We wanted to do the Antarctic trip, but funds didn't allow, so we turned back. We went up then, heading north, and we went all the way through the Americas, through El Salvador, Nicaragua, and then across the Panama. We had to ship, obviously, through there because it was difficult, the middle bit.
Yeah, the Darien Gap.
The Darien Gap, that causes a few problems. And then Colombia, trying to get the narcotics thing. And I had anaphylactic shocks at this stage, a couple of those. I was having health problems. I had no EpiPen and nearly died a couple of times. But, part and parcel of the journey. Then we managed to follow the Dalton Highway up through Alaska to Prudhoe Bay, and we were at the top of the Americas. Hooray!
What was the most exciting things that happened?
It's either been on two separate journeys, because when they asked David, were you scared? Was it this? Was it that? He's going, no, it was fine. And in answer to that, well, we're here, so it obviously wasn't that bad. But there was many, many times when it was terrifying, but not at the time. It was looking back. Our first real breakdown was when we were on our learning curve and we were going through Namibia, and we were doing the Etosha Strip, which is like a road of nothing really, with nothing on it. And then we broke down. The temperature gauge went up and up and up, and we were overheating. So we got the Haynes manual out, and David had put most of the spares that were listed in the back into the back of the vehicle. So we happened to have a water pump, and we surmised it was this. So we started changing this water pump, and then these 10 black guys came out of the bush, and they were saying by hand signals, are we okay? We've got a problem. We're going, no, we're fine, we're going. And they happened to say, watch out for the elephants. And we said, yeah, we'll be fine. And off they went. Well, it got to 10 o'clock. There was nuts and bolts going everywhere. They were on the floor. We were nearly killing each other. We were sweating. We had no water to wash because we needed to keep it for the radiator. So we went, you know what? Let's just get into bed. We got into the roof tent. And then we heard all this, the noise and the bustle of elephants. And we could hear. And I just went, blimey, David, they sound a bit close. So I looked out of the roof tent, and literally 2-3 meters from us must have been 30 elephants. Now, we're in the middle of the nowhere. We have no phone. Nobody knows where we are. We're in a roof tent, and we've been told to beware, and we cannot move because the vehicle is in pieces around us. And I went, oh my goodness, David, elephants, there's like elephants. And he said, what do we do? I said, well, didn't you ask those? Can't you remember what they said? And we said, oh my God, why didn't we ask them? So I said, look, just lie still. And then I went, look, you're breathing. Will you stop breathing? And then eventually they left. I could actually even see their eyelashes. I could see them stripping the bark off the little saplings and eating the bark. It was absolutely amazing, had we not have been in a roof tent in the middle of nowhere. But the following morning, we managed to get the book out, and we carried on, and we eventually changed this water pump. We got back in Lizzybus and off we went. Now, that was the best moment on the journey, because for once we felt like intrepid explorers. The water pump worked, and the temperature gauge sat exactly halfway up, and we're looking at each other, and we're driving along. There's this rattly old Land Rover in the middle of the African bush, and we not only fixed it, we'd had our own experience with the elephants, and we just went, oh, we can do this, and we moved forward from that day, really.
Again, this is a long running theme that pops up within the podcast, is that generally out of kind of bad experiences, or what initially seem like bad experiences, good things typically come, and though you end up either with the most memorable anecdotes, or just the best stories, or making the greatest friendships from those kind of scenarios. When you meet new people, do you always bust out the same anecdotes, or are there just too many to pick from?
It's not about the destination, it's the journey. And the journey just absolutely makes it for us. You meet so many people on the road, and everyone we've met on the road who's overlanding, there is not one I wouldn't trust with my credit cards, with my money, with my life. Everyone, we're all cut from the same cloth. And that's people who drive around on a motorcycle or drive around in a $500,000 Unimog. Everyone, because we have this common feeling for travelling.
It's a kind of worldly education, isn't it? I think once you've travelled through a certain number of countries and realize what's important in life. That's something that's unifying across all overlanders. Is you don't have an attachment to kind of lots of physical belongings. You're used to living very simply and basically. You have a really good understanding of what's important in life, I think, as an overlander.
It's fundamentally changed the way I look out on my life. It's certainly made me appreciate what I have back home.
Yeah.
I've got a bit of a back issue at the moment, so I can go down to a doctor and I can see a doctor within one day. Now, I won't get contentious, but our health service has clearly got some issues at the moment. But even with that, it's still better than what about 90% of the world has to look forward to.
Yeah.
We have so much here. Yeah, when a policeman walks up to me in England, he's not going to ask me for money. He's not looking for corruption, not looking for a bit of dash. We come from we are incredibly lucky with what we have. We are blessed coming from the UK and being able to travel the way we do travel. It opens your eyes so much more. Yeah. And yet the poorest people we have met, and we're talking people who have absolutely nothing, and we must look like millionaires to them, will share food with you. And when you go to pay them, because you feel that a small debt of gratitude, I need to give you, they will not accept it off you. They will not accept it.
Yeah. I think that's one of the most humbling things, I think.
It is. The other thing is as well is you have to remember is that we are privileged, but this in a way is a privilege of our own making, because we're the ones that gave it had the guts, the balls, the determination. I'm not. The other thing is that a lot of people say to us, "Oh, we're only going for a week or a month or something," unlike us who've been out and about for the last 8 years. That's not what it's about. It's just about going outside of your comfort zone. If you're only used to going to, let's say, Blackpool and you go to Spain, it's huge to you. So it's just making that initial first step and getting out there and doing it, because from that little beginning then you start to push the boundaries and do a bit more. Nobody ever thought in a million years that we would be able to do what we're doing. They laughed at us, really they did, and we were laughing at ourselves, to be honest. And we still now think when people say we know what we're doing, we're almost experts. We're going, us there. You're joking. We haven't got a clue. We just seem to make the right choice, I think, at the right time more than anything. And we can see the funny side of it. We don't take ourselves seriously, and if we hear too much information, we ignore it.
Yeah, again, that's typical of most overlanders, is having that. It's the right kind of attitude initially,
Yes.
isn't it? It's I think once you've acquired that, then you're pretty much set, and you can approach anything. Has there been any particular countries that have just kind of blown you away, or kind of completely crushed your preconceptions about what they were going to be?
I think the countries that impressed us the most and shocked us the most were Iran.
Yeah.
The so-called axis of evil, probably the friendliest people you will ever meet anywhere in the world. It is incredible in Iran.
Yeah.
And the other one was Ethiopia.
Okay,
having come from a generation of Bob Geldof and plague and pestilence in that part of the world, to actually cross the border and see how green and lush and the amount of cattle everybody had, we're thinking, this can't be Ethiopia. And the best coffee in the world as well.
Yeah, Ethiopia. Not saying Ethiopia is still not desperately poor. So you lose this judgment, or that you've ever had, your Western eyes that you view things with. So you're now in an African country, so you accept that people live in the mud huts and draw the water from the well. But it was lush and green, and the cattle were quite fat. And the most amazing thing was there was a place there called the Churches of Lalibela, and there was whole churches built into the hillside, and they were dug out of the hillside, and you went into them, and they were and each country that you go to, we never wanted to get to the stage where you actually go, oh, there's another mountain, there's another river, there's another waterfall, because you start to see bigger and better. And then what brings you back is when you just sit with somebody and eat porridge in the gutter with them, or they take you into their mud hut and you eat food with them. So you sit like they do and you eat with your hands and you share what bits you've got. We eat with your right hand, and that draws you back to and keeps you focused to see that it's just incredible. And we've been amazed constantly by every overlander we've met's got a tale to tell about somebody who left a note on the Land Rover or the Land Cruiser on their vehicle, let's say, to join them for tea or taking them in. And we've had strangers let us use their showers in America, and they say the civilized world now won't do it like America and Australia. We had exactly the same in those countries.
I can certainly second Iran. Iran was the most incredible friendly country we've ever been to. And just recently, you've been through the Pamirs, right? And through Central Asia.
Yeah, we went through Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan. We got deported from Azerbaijan because we didn't sign on after 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah, so we got caught out by that. But we did all the stands. We did the Pamir, and it's one of the last great driving roads for travel. It's an incredible part of the world, and strangely, the most amazing thing you'll see in the Pamir is the number of cyclists cycling that route.
Yeah,
that to me was just everyone says, oh, you're mad driving around the world in a Land Rover. Then you see a cyclist cycling the Pamir highway at 3,500 meters in the burning heat, and it's just like, my God, we thought we were mad. There's people who are more unhinged than we are.
What's actually happened to us is when we did get to the top of the Americas, which was a Shire, the Land Rover was absolutely falling to pieces. We were living in the roof tent, and we were living with boxes inside, and we made a decision there. We thought, we want to carry on travelling, but we can't live like this. We need to get inside for the internal space, the weather, the insects, everything. So, and when we're coming across Canada, we decided that we would spend some of our savings and rejig the Land Rover. So we had a roof conversion. We made our way back to England, November 2016. So we've been out there for 5 years. 2016, we spent 10 months. We cut the lid off. We did a flip-top roof. We made internal space so we could sleep inside, both of us with the lid down if we had to. And we changed the water. We had jerry cans. We changed that to a tank and just tweaked it, to be truthful. We had a big awning from Alucab, like a shadow awning that came all the way around the back.
Yeah. And
it's transformed our life. And now we're doing the old Silk Road to Japan and Korea.
Was there a time when you ever thought, we should trade Lizzybus in and switch this up a little bit?
Yes. Yeah, there was a toss-up between how much it's going to cost for us to do this, or how much it would cost just to replace it with something else. It was fleeting, and then we said, well, how can we carry on saying, because they always say, in the same vehicle, and you go, well, no, this is number 2 or 3 or 4. Yes, actually, it's the same vehicle. Not much of us. There are lots changed, but for us, David, what did you think?
Yeah, the thing was, our Land Rover's now become Trigger's broom.
Yeah.
You put an Alucab pop-top roof on it, and the change in our life has been incredible. Whereas before we'd have to live outside most of the time, now we can actually have space inside the vehicle, and you climb into your bed inside the vehicle rather than going up a ladder on the outside. It's an absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and that conversion then, had you seen other people with that same conversion? And because the other thing I like to talk about as well is the kind of growth within the overlanding market, and I'm fully aware that there are loads and loads of German and Dutch companies who do conversions, but there is an increasing amount of English companies now doing conversions as well. Why did you choose that particular one?
The conversion we had is made by a South African company who, to be honest, they have their fingers on the pulse, I think, for the outdoor life in your vehicle. The South Africans are experts at it. And the roof tent we've plumbed for, it's called the Icarus. The bed itself is the full length of the vehicle.
Yeah.
So you have the whole roof pivots up, and then you have your bed, and then if you want to make the bed virtually 8 foot long, you drop a little cat flap down, and you have a full length bed that you can sleep on. And it's just a very, very well made bit of kit for us. We've seen the other conversions, and to be honest, pound for pound, it was very, very good value.
I just have to say though, Andy, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. When we set off, it was a roof tent on the top from a ladder, and that was about it, to be truthful. When we got down to South Africa, which was a year later, so we're talking about 2010, it was there that we saw what the South Africans had got, and it was there that we said that's what we needed. But of course, we're on the road at the time, and that's what planted us in our head that we wanted to do the South African one. But since then, another 5-6 years down the road, there are many, many companies doing it now. We have a friend in Australia, Daniel, and he was doing it at the time on Land Cruisers and cutting the top off and creating the lift top lid. And it most definitely is that if you're doing 3 to 6 months, then just stick with the old-fashioned roof tent. Anything longer than a year to 2 years, spend a bit more money and get yourself the conversion. It's worth every penny.
Yeah, I think those simple luxuries, and you hit the nail on the head there. I think if you're using or sleeping in the vehicle every day, then it really does need to be convenient. On our car, we've got the kind of Magliina pop top,
yes,
the hard shell, and so that's very quick to set up and pack away. But we camped quite a few times with people in various vehicles that had the kind of canvas fold-out roof tents, and they were taking like 15-20 minutes to set them up every day, and that becomes very tiresome, I think, if you're sleeping in it every day.
Yeah, we started with one of those originally, and then when we got to South Africa, we traded it for something very similar to the Magliina pivoting one. And then we saw also then the roof conversions you could do, and that's what we went for when we got back to the UK. But I have to say, it's always your third truck that's the perfect one.
Yeah,
we're with ours probably about 80 to 85% there. The improvement again is exponential, but a brilliant improvement. So much so that we crossed the border into Russia from Georgia, and we arrived very, very late at night. We didn't get off the border post till 9 o'clock. We needed to camp up somewhere. You don't want to be putting your tent up in a town on the Russian border. So we now have a facility. We can actually sleep inside the vehicle in a small double bed we can make up in the vehicle without putting the roof up. So we just park up and sleep in the vehicle when we need to as well, which is something we could never do before. Yeah. In fact, before, what we'd have to do is sleep in the front seats upright, which is probably the most uncomfortable night's sleep you'll ever have.
Yeah, I think that ability to be inconspicuous, I think, is something that's needed, because as much as we love off-roading and driving through mountain ranges, we do like to go to the cities as well. Yeah. And I think having that ability to be sleep inside your vehicle, is certainly something that's useful.
It also has a big impact on the budget, because we're on a very tight budget due to we will be getting a pension eventually, but the government is changing that. When you can sleep covertly inside your vehicle in a town, then you're not paying for camping and stuff. You're wild camping when you're out on the road, and in the towns and cities, as a one-off, you can actually just sleep in the vehicle. It makes a big difference to the budget.
Yeah, and again, that's probably where most of our expenses go, really, are the hotels when we stay in cities, because we don't really have that luxury in our vehicle to sleep inside it. But we're working on that. What have you got planned next then? Which visas are you currently waiting for?
We're after Russian business visas, 3-month business visas. That will then mean we can go back into Russia, because the problem we have at the moment is that we're trying to get to Mongolia for Nadam.
Yeah.
Which is 13th of July this year. So that's a week. So we want to spend probably about a month in Mongolia. But the Russian embassy in Mongolia won't issue tourist visas to the English, because we then need to drive from Mongolia to Vladivostok, which is going to take 2 to 3 weeks to drive anyway. So what we're doing is we're just going for 3-month visas for Russia. It means we can just drive through Russia, double entry, drop into Mongolia, spend a month in Mongolia, and then probably 2 or 3 weeks to drive out to Vladivostok. Then we ship from Vladivostok to South Korea. There's a ferry that runs to South Korea, and then that ferry runs to Japan. So we're probably going to have about 4 or 5 months in sort of Korea and Japan before shipping, depending on the time of year, to either North America or South America. We want to arrive somewhere in their summer, not their winter.
Yeah, perfect. But that's a great route, actually. That was actually what our initial route we had planned was. We ended up we're switching it to go from Mongolia back into Kazakhstan, but all that fell apart when my parents fell ill and we ended up coming back. But initially our very, very original route was to go to Vladivostok and take that same ferry actually down to Korea and Japan.
It's actually quite a good value ferry as well. It's quite surprising. It's expensive, but it's not as expensive as I thought it would be.
Yeah, cool. So in total, how many countries are you up to now? You said right at the very beginning, but I've forgotten.
86, I think.
86, and future plans, just keep on going.
Just keep going, yeah. Sort of just get out of the UK, turn right, and just keep heading east.
I think one of the most luxurious things that we've got is time. And in regards of planning, when we followed sort of you did your route, we were on the back of you through this last little bit. When we got to Kazakhstan, we had a broken front diff, and problems with the visa stuff. So we went, we turned tail. We put Lizzybus in Bulgaria, and we flew back home for £20 for a flight, and we're currently staying with our sister in the UK, sorting out the visas, saying hello to everybody, and go back. The initial journey was 5 years of when Lizzybus stayed exactly where she was, and when issues like you said with your parents, my mother passed away, my daughter got married, I became a grandmother, one of us had to stay, or two of us, and we just fly back and come back to the vehicle. The biggest expense is the shipping. So if you can store them in the country that you're in, go back and do what you need to do at home, because it always happens. Things like that happen. Then come back and carry on with the journey. If you can do it like that, it's a better way. Yeah,
definitely. That's very, very, very good advice. Okay, we're just running out of time slightly. Yes. I'm on a tight time schedule today, unfortunately, because I would love to sit and chat with you guys for much, much longer.
Sitting here with a couple of bottles of cold beer.
Well, actually,
people don't understand. Overlanding is the pursuit of cold beer around the world.
Well, don't worry. I've been supping on a cold beer while I've been chatting to you. Don't worry.
Swine. I haven't.
If people want to find out more about you guys, what's your website address?
Lizzybus.com.
Yeah.
Or Lizzybus on the Facebook page.
Yeah. I tend to do little updates on Facebook now. The blog David does, our website David does. It hasn't really. We don't have smartphones. We're not particularly up with the Twitter or any of that. But Facebook, if you look us up on there, there's quite a few, and a very short, brief little what we're up to and where we're going.
Yeah, perfect.
Good free advice.
Yes, anyone wants to email us, and they seem to think we know what we're talking about, we're more than happy to impart any of our hard-earned information.
Yeah, buy a Toyota.
Indeed. I don't want that.
That's the only vehicle to have. The price must go up.
Oh, no. Get rid of it. Perfect. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Jayne and David are a fine example of how overlanding can completely change your outlook on life. After a fairly turbulent first 6 months of their adventure, it seems they had some kind of overlanding epiphany, and now they are totally addicted with no plans to stop. At some point in the near future, we're going to have to make some time to speak to them again and really delve deep into their adventures. For now, though, be sure to look them up at lizzybus.com. We love hearing feedback on how we might improve the show, so please get in touch via our website, theoverlandingpodcast.com, where you'll also find links to all our social media channels and bonus material relating to each podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please let us know. You can also show your appreciation by subscribing and reviewing us on whatever platform you use. Writing us a review really does help boost our podcast up the listings, which in turn means these incredible stories will reach more people. If you're an overlander yourself and have an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. We'd also like to hear from anybody who set out on a lengthy overland trip and then decided it wasn't for them. You can email us at aroundtheworldin800days @mail.com. Please like, share, bump and give us a thumbs up along the way. Many thanks for joining us again around the virtual campfire. Goodbye.